Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Airspeed's Avatar Rewatch video. This one's going to be for Book 3, Fire Episode 5, which is The Beach. And this one is animated by Moy Animation, and another episode I really like. I know within the fandom this tends to be one that I think most people like, but there's definitely a group out there within the fandom who tend to not like this one as much. I've never personally kind of understood necessarily like why, because I think it's such an important character development episode. I agreed it's a little bit kind of odd to just suddenly be like, oh, Fire Nation teen drama focus, but it's such good development for our four kind of Fire Nation teens, and then it's Team Avatar's first encounter with Combustion Man. It makes, I think, for a very, very entertaining episode. And I think ultimately, getting straight into it, the big takeaway from this episode is that character development for all four of these characters. Yes, we get some Zuko development, and we also get some Azula development, but I think the big takeaways from this is like Ty Lee and May development, because from their introduction, they haven't really got a lot of character focus. Outside of this kind of weirdness with Ty Lee of like, she left kind of coming from a noble family to join the circus for some reason and wanted to kind of stay there, and it was only kind of Azula kind of scaring her into doing it. That really is why Ty Lee's on the team. May, again, comes from a noble family, and, you know, the dynamic with her family seems to be a bit weird. She seems a little removed from them to where she's not as invested in her family, so like there's something kind of up there. But outside of that, it's just been their basic personalities of like Ty Lee is very bubbly, gymnastic, has the chi blocking, and then May is kind of more, quiet. She kind of isn't very emotional, doesn't really express herself all that much, and in a way isn't as devoted to the Azula cause as like Ty Lee, and uses kind of like knives when she fights. But and of course the relationship with Zuko, but like, the individual characters, kind of who they are, what they're like, I think it really takes this episode to really develop those two. And obviously most of the focus of this episode, I think, in terms of what's really good, is that scene around the campfire where they all just kind of take a shot at each other, basically, pointing out kind of flaws within each other and kind of moving past them as they kind of go around the group. Ty Lee is kind of the first one to get some focus here, and they obviously establish here that she has 6 identical sisters, which we meet in the Free Comic Sisters, and she kind of left the family in a way, joined the circus, to kind of make herself feel more unique, that she wasn't just part of this set of sisters and seen as one of many, and she wanted to be more unique. And, all the others point out that, she's kind of doing it for attention. That's why she kind of sort of invites on a lot of the kind of male attention that she tends to get, and they call her a little bit of an attention seeker because she didn't get it from before. But you could see that she's very passionate around the decision that she made, and that she's obviously felt that it's helped her going forward, that she has had a chance to kind of find herself in a way, and especially with where they kind of go with Ty Lee come the end of like, she understands herself enough that she's actually okay with joining an organization where they kind of all dress the same, like the Kyoshi Warriors. So that's always been a little bit of like the subtle arc of Ty Lee across the show. And then of course in the episode itself, Ty Lee gets a little bit of focus because it is kind of more focused around like the dynamics of kind of like teen social hierarchy stuff. So Ty Lee, being obviously a very attractive girl, gets a lot of attention from the guys, and because Azula is the way she is, she's kind of like not suddenly the center of attention, and she's jealous of Ty Lee. So Ty Lee gets some focus here because Azula actually admits to her that she's jealous of her, because a skill that Azula doesn't have is, this sort of interaction, and that's something that, Ty Lee can help her with. It helps to establish that Azula and Ty Lee, there is a friendship connection there. Now, how close it is obviously very hard to tell, just because of, I suppose, the nature of Azula as a character. We still don't know everything about her, and it's going to take the comics exploring that, I think, to really fully understand everything about her. but she is one of the more interesting characters to speculate on. But Ty Lee, just seeing her, get all the attention and, kind of use it a little bit, and, Azula kind of accuses her of just kind of like stringing them along, being a tease, and no one actually cares about her. Obviously, it made her upset. I think she does it to a degree, but she is just fundamentally a very nice character. So you can sort of tell that she doesn't want to like hurt anyone by just kind of saying like no, and just like immediately just flat out rejecting everyone. But it kind of does end up, getting her into a little bit of trouble. But it was cool to see that focus for her of like, here's a situation where Ty Lee kind of gets to be the star of the show. And then even May actually kind of ends up kind of standing out within this kind of teen situation here, because Chan and Ranjan actually, like, they single out Ty Lee and May of the group of four to be the ones that they invite to the party, because obviously the idea being that Zuko and Azula are the ones who are kind of the weird personalities that they don't actually want to be involved with, whereas like the bubbly girl and then the kind of brooding quiet girl is actually like dynamics that they like, whereas Zuko's just openly like angry and confrontational, and then Azula is so intimidating to like everyone she encounters that she just can't turn off that switch and kind of make herself be like kind of open and personable to everyone, so they just kind of get invited along just kind of because. But yes, seeing May actually, like Ranjan seems to like May, and so that kind of creates a jealousy angle with Zuko. And it's a lot of teen stuff, but it also serves to, I think, create good character development in that it's really kind of testing the relationship of May and Zuko, just how angry Zuko is at everything, and he's reading into these little things, and May is just trying to get her to calm down, but the whole dynamic of their relationship that, I suppose on both of their sides that they feel they need to develop is that May thinks Zuko's too hot-headed, and then Zuko thinks that May doesn't express herself enough. So it's about, each of them drawing that other side of, the other kind of out. Zuko drawing that emotion out of May, and then May kind of calming down Zuko a bit, which usually happens, but obviously Ember Island, as Lo and Lee explain, is kind of meant to emphasize these things and then allow you to kind of smooth it out, and that's kind of what happens in the scene at the end, because the thing with May that we get is that the reason she in a way doesn't express herself so much is because she was kind of repressed a bit as a child, because the focus of their family was so much on Ukano and his kind of political career and getting to be the governor of New Ozai, and the mother was very strict on Michi, I think is May's mother's name, was very strict on May because of the father's political career, and so she only kind of spoke when spoken to, and I think that explains kind of how she ended up the way she did, even though they all kind of, as they start, talk about how it wasn't really a problem, and then get into the fact that it actually was a problem, that I had a perfect childhood, I was rich, but I get in trouble if I ever acted out, and you see where the issue kind of comes in, and that's why she doesn't express herself. And I like how it's kind of her getting angry about in relation to how she feels about her own kind of history, and how she feels about the way Zuko's acting, and Zuko actually likes it when she expresses herself, and I suppose because of that, May actually likes Zuko when he's a bit calmer, and it just speaks to their unique dynamic of like the whole idea of like, instead of being really lovey-dovey, it's more like the I don't hate you type thing, but that's just the dynamic of their relationship. I'll get into Azula next, because I think the big takeaway from this episode is probably the Azula stuff. It's probably the most important, at least right now, like where we are in the comics. This episode is probably the biggest example of kind of showing this side of Azula, whereas she gets praised as a character, of course, for how powerful she is in battle and tactically. She gets praised for her ability to manipulate people, take command, be a leader, of course. But you really see in this episode that like something she just does not have is something like basically every other character has, and that is like the ability to just kind of connect with people on like a personal level and kind of form a friendship with them, or a romantic relationship. She doesn't know what to do. She just kind of all she knows is how to kind of manipulate people, control them through fear, and she really doesn't get how to act and just kind of get people to like her in that sense. So it's obviously speaks to the weakness of that control, which ultimately comes into play with Mei and Ty Lee, of that, like, if you control people through fear, it's not the best form of control, because people can get past fear because there are kind of emotions that are stronger than that, like love, basically, or I suppose in Ty Lee's case, a stronger friendship with Mei, kind of overriding any fear of Azula, and just that those things can actually overpower the control through fear, and that because Azula seemingly never learned those things, or just the type of character that she is naturally, isn't, used to those type of things, she doesn't have that. Whereas Zuko, at a base level, when he's not so conflicted as he is right now, kind of has that. Like, look at the way Zuko acts when he actually does join the group. He's actually, like, so non-threatening, and just actually is kind of like almost a complete dork in a way, because that's how he is. Zuko is kind of at a base level sort of awkward a little bit, so that kind of helps, like, people to actually connect with him. Even like Katara and Zuko in, like, the finale, he's always been so threatening and like a combatant against Team Avatar, but just in like a couple of lines he was able to kind of get Katara to kind of, put her guard down a bit and actually, like, make a kind of connection with him. So Zuko has that ability, I suppose, because he, like, learned from his mother, whereas he doesn't have a ton of influence from Ozai, whereas it's the opposite with Azula. She doesn't have a massive influence from her mother, but she does have a huge influence from Ozai, which is obviously the skills and the focus on combat and military tactics and manipulation, which is obviously skills that Ozai has, but very little on, like, caring about friendships and family bonds and that sort of thing, which again are things that Ozai doesn't really have himself. Like, we don't see, like, Ozai's friends or anything like that, and just seeing her in a way kind of be, like, vulnerable in these type of situations of just, like, where are all the boys going over to Ty Lee and not me? And then I thought it was very interesting when she actually just admits that, like, the reason I didn't tell them we were Fire Nation royalty or nobles is because I actually just want to see how people treat me when they don't know that I'm the princess. And I thought that was a moment of, in a way, growth for her, in that she actually wants to know what it's like to be normal. And the fact is, a lot of people think she's a little bit weird when she's just normal. And I suppose getting that pointed out to her and realizing that that's something she's lacking basically caused her to need Ty Lee's help, and just admit, like, how do I in any way, like, approach getting a boy to like me? And obviously Ty Lee basically explains flirting to her, and Azula's initially like, that doesn't make any sense, but let's try it. And actually she, more or less starts a relationship with Chan, but ruins it kind of by going overboard with the war and Fire Nation battleship stuff. So that's interesting. And then just the fact that she obviously pursued Chan because she liked him, so Azula having an attraction to someone, that's, like, also a kind of new dynamic we haven't really seen before. That's a different side of her, that, she's so, like, I think we view her so much as this kind of, like, fighter, military tactician, took over bossing, say amazing things, that we almost ignore the fact that she just doesn't have this, bubbly personality aspect at all to her. And with her at the fire, I thought it was interesting that she just makes fun of everyone else. But then when it kind of comes around time for her, like, she's just like, yeah, I am perfect, and then, there was nothing wrong with me, and then she brings up just randomly, like, I could talk about how, like, Mother always, preferred Zuko, and considered me a monster, I was, it hurt, but, and then she kind of tries to deflect it by saying she doesn't care, but the fact that she even brought that up shows that it's a big issue for her, and for someone who doesn't really have issues for the most part, her bringing that up clearly shows that was the biggest thing there. And especially going into the comics where this is being addressed to a degree, and everyone's waiting for them to get back to the Azula story, finding out, I suppose, the exact relationship between Ursa and Azula is going to be very interesting, because we know Ursa cared about Azula. She obviously was concerned about the way Azula was kind of turning out by being kind of so, cruel and callous, basically, which I think any mother would be, like just seeing their daughter be like that. And I think most of that comes from just Azula's close relationship with Ozai, and Ursa kind of needing to focus on Zuko, because if she didn't, no one would, because Ozai didn't care about him, which is obviously explained a lot in the Search comic if you haven't read it. It's just very, very interesting to get that dynamic, and we're still waiting for that big scene of where Azula and Ursa finally talk to each other, and they address basically what their relationship was and what it is, and we'll see where we can go from here. I think a lot of people are assuming it's going to take some combination of like Zuko, Iroh, Ursa, maybe even Ki, to kind of help Azula get to a point where maybe she'll go on the right path. She'll have that journey that Zuko had of struggling but siding with the right side in the end. And that's going to be interesting to see where we go. Or will they go down the road of like it being not so much like she is the way she is because of an influence from Ozai, and more of like, no, she's just naturally inclined to be that type of person. Ozai may be helped to like emphasize that a lot, and the fact that her mother didn't have as much time for Azula meant that she didn't get this other development that she needed of like just being a nice person kind of type thing. Maybe that'll come out and be a big thing in the end, but we're obviously waiting for the comics to address that. And I just find it very interesting that like this episode is one of the only episodes that we really get to see that other side of Azula at all. Nearly every other episode is about her manipulating people and that sort of thing. So to see this other side, I think, makes this episode worthwhile, like just for the Azula stuff. It's really, really well done. Just to see that the one thing that gets to her is that, as far as she's concerned, her mother considered her a monster. And even though she admits that she kind of is, and it's true, she does say it still hurts, and I just find that very interesting. As Zuko in this episode, of course, jealousy about Ranjan and May, but the core of it is just that, like he really puts off a bad vibe to a lot of the other people around just because he is so aggressive and outwardly angry. And the big thing they all, at the campfire, they bring up is like, why are you so angry? Like, are you angry at any of us? Like, Ozai, or what? And when the big reveal comes out, like, you sort of knew what was going to come out. And when he just admits it, like, I'm angry at myself, it's this really great moment of like, yes, like he finally gets it, that he's angry because he knows he kind of made the wrong decision back in Ba Sing Se, but is kind of still questioning it. He doesn't know if that was the right move or not now, because he's having so many doubts. Was he right to send Kabushman after Aang, or should he have left immediately? Where does he actually go? Those type of questions. And then because he's so emotional at that moment, he kind of inadvertently reveals to Azula with some of the dialogue that he says that, he basically kind of confirms to Azula. She's already had suspicions based on previous interactions with Zuko, but this really, I think, confirms to Azula that Aang probably is still alive because of the wording he uses of like, my father thinks I'm a hero, rather than saying, rather than just saying, like, I'm a hero to my father or something like that, making it seem like a truth, but he says thinks, suggesting it was a lie. And Azula definitely picks up on that. But I like that May immediately kind of goes to Zuko after that and just like, seeing you kind of admit that, like, that's your problem, and the kind of like, I can help you with this as like your girlfriend. It was just a nice relationship moment, seeing them kind of come together at that moment, and just seeing just how conflicted Zuko actually is. Him admitted that he wants to fix things with his uncle and is upset by the fact that his uncle isn't saying anything to him, and it obviously is a setup for the fact that like the next episode is finally when Iroh actually begins to talk to him again. And I think Iroh can definitely, like, I suppose, sense to a degree that like Zuko is kind of on the verge of maybe having that moment of by himself, realizing he made the wrong choice, and realize that now is probably the time to act and kind of explain a lot of the confusion Zuko's having to him. So that coming up is going to be really good in the next episode. Last thing to really say is, of course, you get these little moments with Zuko where he has these flashbacks to, I suppose, a happier time in a way, of like showing that the family did go to a beach when the family was younger and he maybe had some good times, but they very specifically don't really ever show Zuko being overly friendly with his father. It's always like, okay, Ozai's in this shot, but he's not interacting with Zuko so much. The big moment that just show happiness is Iroh with Luten, like holding up a younger Zuko, and that being a really kind of like, I suppose, telling moment of like, you know, that's the family dynamic, I suppose. Or wait, I think that's what that shot is meant to be. I think it's Iroh, Luten, and Zuko. I don't think it's meant to be Iroh, Zuko, and Azula, because obviously like Luten's older than Zuko. It would make sense if that's the case. But still, you know, just that Iroh is one of the nice memories he remembers from Ember Island. And again, it speaks that I'd love to know more about the relationship, like between like Zuko and Iroh prior to the series. We more or less know how like it kind of came about with regards to like, you know, Iroh focusing more on Zuko after the death of Luten, but seeing, you know, them interact beforehand, seeing like Luten and Zuko interact and that sort of thing, seeing Ursa and Iroh interact as well. Like flashbacks could be really good in relation to this scene, but just seeing by the end of the episode him kind of burning kind of those moments of the past, like, so, you know, in a way I think it's more about like his father, the anger at his father, but and just just how unsure he is about everything, about like he's back now but everything's wrong. His father thinks he's a hero but he isn't, and then he knows nothing about what happened to his mother, and all this kind of confusion. It's really, really interesting stuff. And the other side of the episode is Team Avatar versus Combustion Man. And what's interesting is that Combustion Man basically ends up helping out Team Avatar in a way, because he's working for Zuko here. He ends up, you know, basically having his, you know, giant bird capture, you know, Fire Nation scouts, their hawk that they were sending to the Fire Lord. So only Combustion Man has the information that Aang is actually alive and is the Avatar. So Combustion Man ends up kind of sort of saving Team Avatar from their big secret kind of going, you know, being live again to the rest of the world. And he obviously uses that to kind of go after them. You see a little thing with his power of like, you see that he can not just like create explosions with his head, but he seemingly can just, you know, like pinpoint target a point on like the note basically that was being sent to Ozai and make it burn from there, suggesting that like the psychic firebending from his head, he can actually do some level of like heat or small firebending just psychically with his forehead that isn't just the explosions, which I think is very, very interesting. Just that he did that, because otherwise like we don't really ever see him firebend as such. He always uses combustion bending. Peli, of course, uses some firebending when we see her do it, but that's one of the few times you actually see Combustion Man use a bending ability that is not just his combustion. But the fight is cool, you know, they realize that just they're kind of outpowered by him, that from distance and the crazy explosions that he can create, they can't really fight him head on, so they just kind of have to, you know, escape. And there's some really cool bending, but the fundamental idea is just that they're being pursued by this guy. They don't know what's going on with his powers, but they do manage to escape in the end, and it's pretty cool how it happens. But yeah, that's my review for The Beach. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the episode, as well as what I had to say about it. But yeah, that's been today's video. Thanks for watching, and bye.